Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of OnPattison podcast. So happy you're with us today. I'm Bob Cooney, joined by Anthony Sanfilippo. So many great things going on in the city of Philadelphia when it comes to sports. And Anthony and I have been lucky enough to be around a bunch of it lately. So Ant, checking in. How you doing today?
Doing great, Bobby. It's a good Friday morning. Like it's the weather is turning. We're starting to get more spring-like. I know it's going to get a little cool the next couple of days, but it's not going to be ridiculous. Like we're almost to the point where it's t-shirt and shorts weather every day, which is great. And it's exciting that we're there, and we still have two teams that are pretty into things in the postseason. Like I don't know if anybody would have thought, Bob, a month and a half ago, if we would have said both the Flyers and the Sixers would be an interesting team in the postseason. In the first round, Flyers up 3-0, Sixers 1-1 with the Celtics. Like, I don't know if anybody would have thought that was a possibility, and yet here we are.
And yet here we are with a baseball team that's lost 8 or 9 in a row on the negative side.
9 in a row, yeah.
Right. So just craziness abound, but it has been fun. It's been great. We have great coverage for you guys here on Pattison, where, I was up in Boston following the Sixers for games 1 and 2. Anthony has been with the Flyers nonstop all season long, out to Pittsburgh, train ride out there, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But Anthony and I were in the building the other night for the Flyers win over the Penguins that put them up 3-0. And I'll tell you, Ant, now it's been a couple years since I've covered a Flyers game. I'll be honest with our listeners and our readers out there. I think the last time I covered the team was John Stevens was the head coach.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But getting into the building the other night, the electricity was unbelievable. And it was cool. Like I watch every second of every sporting event in this city. I pretty much watch every second of. So I'm not, not unfamiliar with the Flyers. Being down there, it was really cool to watch how they, in my opinion, have amped up their play. Multiple goal scorers, good defense, great goaltending, the physicality of the team. Just where they are now, is it like head and shoulders above two things, where you thought they could be and where they were during the regular season?
Yeah, those are good questions, Bob. And I will agree with you that the place was unbelievable. Right before I answer your question, I went to dinner with Bundy, Chris Terrian, over at Chickies and Pete's before the game. And the place, there was probably 800 Flyers fans in there. And this was at 5 o'clock, right? 2 hours before the game. And I can't tell you how many people came up to us, all flyered up, right? Let's go, Bundy. Aunt, love your stuff. Like they're going crazy. Like they were just, and I don't normally have that, right? Like, I mean, they were just so revved up. So I love seeing the city like that. It really is. It's when Philadelphia sports fans are at their best, is when they're together and supporting a particular team. For I don't like the infighting. I don't like that. It's like a family, right? You don't like the infighting. You don't like all the bickering on social media. But when when everybody's kind of together behind the same thing, there is nothing better than the Philadelphia fan at that time. And I was really impressed by it. But to answer your questions, they are so much better than I think anybody really thought they could be. And by that I mean, look. I know that they implemented this new defensive zone structure coming out of the Olympics. It's what they had to do in order to even have a prayer, right?
And real quick, I think this is a great story. So can you just, maybe for people that don't know what it was, what happened at the Olympic break with Rick Tocchet, can you let some people know again what it is?
Sure. So Rick Tocchet at the Olympics, he's an assistant coach for Team Canada, and he's there with current New York Islanders coach Pete DeBoer. At the time, Pete DeBoer was not the Islanders coach. He had been coaching the Dallas Stars last year. He got fired after a pretty public back and forth with the Stars goalie Jake Ottinger. But he was working up there with Team Canada. And have you covered an Olympics before, Bob?
No, have not. Okay. Never been to an Olympics.
So I've done one, and I don't know if it's the same every time, but I kind of remember in Vancouver it wasn't as bad as what Tocchet said, but the trip from the Olympic Village to where the hockey arena was in Milan was A, long, and B, not easy to make back and forth. So what they would do is when they would leave the Olympic Village, they basically made a day of it until they were done. Even if they had like a game at night and they had a practice in the morning, they just stayed out, by the arena, and they couldn't
do
do
free time.
Yeah, they had a lot of free time. So Tocchet and Pete DeBoer, spend a lot of time together, and Tocchet starts picking his brain. He's like, look, Pete, I can't figure out, why our system isn't working with these guys, whatever. And they actually sat down, and Pete DeBoer helped him put together a defensive zone system that would help, would like take away backdoor plays. It would be more aggressive. It would get more forwards involved. Instead of like immediately flying the zone and breaking out, like and hoping for like a long stretch pass, it's more of an aggressive attacking. So they call it like almost like an overload or a swarm, where they have multiple forwards going to the puck. So if they have two guys, if there's a play on the wall and there's two guys on the wall, you now have three guys going there. And this always allows, it pressures the puck more, and it allows one defenseman to kind of stay home and prevents, open guys from getting on the back door of the net and get cross ice passes that end up in your goal. So this was this whole system that they kind of put together, and the Flyers implemented it right away. And it's been like their saving grace, right?
Yeah.
So that certainly changed everything. But even down the stretch, Bob, like when they were playing great hockey, look, they went 17-7-1 in their last 25 games. And that's really, really good. They needed some help. And if I would have said to anybody, hey, the Flyers are going to go 17-7-1, but look at the teams they're chasing, they're going to lose 2 games to Columbus. They're going to lose 2 games to Detroit, because those are 2 of the teams that they were chasing, right? And they're still going to make the playoffs. People say, no prayer. Like you can't, you can have a really good record, but you need to beat the teams that you're chasing. The Flyers went completely off script. Like this has never happened. They were 9 points out of a playoff spot on March 10th.
Yeah.
No NHL team has ever come from behind and made the playoffs when they were that far behind. And so when you sit there and say, could anybody imagine that they were playing this way, that anybody could play this way and get to be this good? Did you ever imagine them being this good? No, I knew. Now, I kind of knew they were better than they had been playing. I had been saying all along that this is, the fans were kind of being a little bit too harsh on the Flyers. I think that they were a team on the come. I had picked them preseason and even at the Christmas break to be a playoff team. And then I jumped off. The wagon, right? Okay. At the end of February. The first game back from the Olympics, they lost to Washington.
Right.
And they fell further. I think they were 8 points back at that point with 25 to go. And I wrote a story on OnPattison, like, it's going to be a 6th straight year you're missing the playoffs. Like, because it had never been done before. Like what then took place had never happened in the history of the NHL. But I did think that they were a better team. Now you're seeing it, and when you bring in the Martone and bring back Forster, and like you could see, like, my goodness, there's a lot of talent here. If this team had a number 1 center, if this team had a number 1 defenseman, they're a Stanley Cup contender.
Wow!
So, yeah,
wow!
Like if you have those additional pieces, you're a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, and this is all golden in that the Michkovs and the Martones and so many of 24 and younger guys on this team are getting this experience. And that only helps you moving forward. And then we'll see what the offseason holds. But there was a phrase that a guy that I used to cover, Doug Collins, used to, unique individual, still a good friend of mine, but unique individual. He would talk about fool's gold a lot. And when you describe the Flyers playing the way they're playing, you didn't think they could get to this level of play. Did they think they could get to this level of play? Are they playing over their heads or is this the best version of what they can do? And maybe it's sustainable.
I think that I think we have to look at the opposition a little bit, Bob, right? And okay. I don't want to I don't want to throw cold water on what the Flyers are doing because it's awesome, right? And they've probably arrived, at least a year earlier than even they expected internally. Like if you put, if you injected Keith Jones and Danny Briere with truth serum, they would tell you that this team was probably not ready to be a playoff team this year. They were probably still a year away, even though that they went into the locker room and they told the players, we're giving you a different message than we're saying publicly. We want you to go and make the playoffs. I think that was still, you always set goals that are higher than what you want, than what you really believe you can get, right? We talk about this in baseball all the time. Bryce Harper wants to walk 150 times. He's not going to walk 150 times, right? Like it's just never going to happen. But it's a nice, ambitious goal to have, to walk 100 times, for example, right? So it's the same thing. The Flyers have this ambitious goal that they want to, make the playoffs, but they really believe that they're just short of it. That being said, like they have a certain something that is needed, and it's immeasurable statistically, right? And you look at it and you sit there and go, well, they are really together. They believe in each other, and you look at we talk about vibes. You remember the 22 Phillies, right? It was all about vibes, and that's really what this team. It's what this team has. I'm not saying they're going to the Stanley Cup final, but they have that very similar vibe. Now you look at the Penguins, right? This is an older team, and it's kind of a mishmash team. It was kind of thrown together. And another team that exceeded expectations. Their GM Kyle Dubas did a nice job of bringing in some pieces that you didn't think were going to be great, and then they ended up being pretty good for them. But the Penguins are not a great team. And the Flyers, being as together as they are taking advantage of a team that's not as good as they are, not as together as they are. And I worry that when you get to the next round, and Carolina is also up 3-0 now against Ottawa, so you're probably looking at that as your second round matchup, barring a disastrous collapse by either Philadelphia or Carolina. You're looking at that as their second round. I think that's a completely different scenario. The Hurricanes they're an adult in the room. That's a different matchup, and you might start to see some cracks in what the Flyers are doing against that team. And look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they can go in there and be just as good as they've been here against the and I think they'll be competitive. I think you don't want to ever get too far ahead of yourself. You still have to win Game 4. And so does Carolina. But if that's the matchup, I think they're competitive, but I don't see a way that they can keep this going against that team. I think it's a different level of hockey.
And that's okay. I mean, in my book, that's okay. Like you, as you said, they got to the playoffs, 3% chance to make the playoffs. I don't know 3 weeks ago, something like that, a month ago. They somehow get into the playoffs. You find that kind of little magical run. You then get to the playoffs, and look, I think it was 50-50 throughout nationally, maybe locally, about Penguins, Flyers, kind of the same kind of teams, not when we're talking schematically or anything like that, but either or you could pick to win the series. Now the Flyers have dominated. It's okay. It's almost like you're on borrowed time or playing with somebody else's money, whatever term you want to use. I think this has been such a growing lesson of learning who these kids are in some cases. The adults in the room, the Couturiers, Konechny's, the Hathaways, these guys are really bonding with these kids. It's kind of cool to see. I hear you as far as the Carolina stuff goes, but I'm going to stay in the moment. I'm going to be one of the players. I'm just going to wait, so you got to win the Game 4 first. I think it's cool. And then you go to Carolina, and I think it's a good place for fans to be, for the team even to be like, hey, we're not expected to do anything, but we're sure as hell going to go in there and try to get something.
Well, and that's what's fun, right? Like,
right, exactly.
None of this is expected. What they're currently doing isn't expected. So it's no matter where it ends or how it ends, like this is all gravy. This is all house money. Like that's what's so fun about it. And I really liked the story that you did after Game 3, where you kind of, we've all been talking about the younger players. We've talked about Martone and how much he's meant to the team, and Forster coming back, and the impacts of guys like Denver Barkey, and Zegers is 25 years old, and Jamie Drysdale finally coming into his own at age 24, and like all the youth, like all these young guys who kind of come in and been a breath of fresh air for the Flyers and kind of getting them going into the playoffs. But there is a group of guys who've been a difference maker in this series against the Penguins. And it's not the young kids. I mean, yes, Martone's got a point in each game, couple goals, game-winning goals. Yes, I'm not trying to diminish any of that, right?
Sure.
And four of the 5 goals that were scored in Game 3 were guys' first career postseason goals. Like it happens. But this group of veterans, the kind of pushed aside guys, there was a call for people to get rid of Sean Couturier this year, right? He's been a monster. He's been a monster in the playoffs.
Best player on the ice by far the other night. By far.
Yeah, he's been a monster in the playoffs. Luke Glendening was a scrap heap waiver wire pickup at the trade deadline at 36 years old. Garnet Hathaway had a terrible year, right? He only had 3 points all season long in 66 games played. Was a healthy scratch 15 times by Rick Tocchet. That line specifically, and we're calling it the fourth line, but they're playing more than fourth line minutes. They're playing more like a third line. Like, where are the Flyers in this series without that group? I don't think that they are winning 3-0 for sure without them.
No, and Tocchett's starting them every game. He's throwing them out there saying, here they are, and I love that. Couturier was unbelievable the other night. Forget the 2 assists. I'm not talking about that because people look at box scores and say, that's what it was. He was everywhere, throwing his body around. He had a stick on everything. I was unbelievably impressed with him the other night. And you're right. That.
And you're not a Coots guy.
Not really. No. And it's persuaded by a friend who is a huge hockey guy who is not a Coots guy at all. But Ant, the first thing I did when I got in my car after the game the other night was send a text out to that friend and say, by far, Coots was the best player on the ice tonight.
Yes.
He calls him Coots all the time. But that's another question I want to. Like, this seems to be so spread out with this good play. Like Owen Tippett, I love Owen Tippett. I've loved Owen Tippett since he first stepped on the ice for the Flyers. Just brings everything, the physicality, the shot, everything, the skating. But I think we all know he seemed a little bit banged up in the last game in Pittsburgh, got the cut on the nose, took so many hits, took a couple hits the game before that. I'm watching him I'm getting my days mixed up. Tuesday night? Was Wednesday night?
Wednesday night was Wednesday Game 3. Yeah.
I'm watching him Wednesday night, and I'm thinking, I just wonder if he really has it tonight. Not saying he didn't, but it was okay. It was okay if he didn't. It was okay if his 14 minutes weren't the, bust-ass 14 minutes that he usually gives or however many minutes it was. This is so spread out, Ant. All the different goal scorers you have. You look defensively, everybody is stepping up. I hate that term, but everybody is playing their role to perfection. My question to you, I think Dan Vladar is probably the best player during the regular season and probably during these playoffs, but who has really, I don't want to say surprised you, but who's played better than you thought in these playoffs so far that has been a real help to this team?
I'll answer that, but one thing I want to say about your boy Owen Tippett. Led the team in hits in Game 3 with
11 hits.
11
hits.
Yeah. They've had in 3 games, they've gone 40, 48, 44 on the hits category.
Right.
That's not the Flyers of the regular season. That is a completely different team, right? That's unfathomable that they have that many hits so far this regular season.
Yeah, let me ask you this too, because it's funny you bring that up, because I was thinking this as I'm watching the game, and I'm you look at the stats and you're like, oh my God, Tippett's up to 8 hits already, 9 hits, whatever. Then I started watching saying, I don't think he really has it all there, like I was alluding to. Like he doesn't seem fully, I think he was just kind of exhausted, whatever. So he said, well, what can I do to help the team? I'm going to hit some guys tonight. I really kind of thought that was going on a little bit, and God bless him for doing it.
Yeah, I agree. And so we already talked about Couturier. He's probably my answer to your question, but
is that right?
Since we already talked, because he was not great this season. There was a lot of talk about what do you do with this contract? How do you find a role that fits him? And he's been sensational in the postseason. winning almost every face-off that he's taking, killing penalties, hitting everybody, creating chances. Like that fourth line we talked about, like they create opportunities for the other guys to score. They go out there, have a great shift, keep the puck in the zone, go off, and let somebody else come on and score the goal. Like, I mean, they do great stuff. But since we already talked about Couturier, I'll give you a different one. And actually, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I think it's a pairing, and it's Jamie Drysdale, Cam York. That second pairing to me has been really impressive. I know we could sit here and talk about Ristolainen and Sanheim. They've been equal. They've been really good.
Yeah,
like really, really good as your top pair. But in the playoffs, you need at least two pairs of defensemen to play above their level. And you kind of had a feeling that Ristolainen and Sanheim might be able to do it because we watched them in the Olympics play at a very, very high level against the best players in the world.
Sure.
You didn't know that Drysdale and York could play this way. And I think so that's what's really impressed me is that those two have been as good as they've been. I think Cam York's been very underrated in the playoffs, in the 3 playoff games. He leads the team in penalty kill minutes. So you would think it would be a Ristolainen or a Nick Seeler, like one of the bigger, more physical defensemen would be the guys that are out there all the time. It's not. Cam York is number 1 in penalty kill time for the Flyers. And so I look at that and say those two guys have been a difference maker in my mind, because if they're mediocre, the Flyers probably aren't up 3-0, right? Like we can say that about a lot of guys. They're probably not up 3-0 if this. But that pairing is playing over 20 minutes a night. And that's the most minutes they've ever played together per game. And they're doing a great job. So, like, I look at that and say, that's the one I go, that's a little bit of a surprise for me, and it's making a difference.
And it made it a little easier the other night. I was watching the Anaheim game late after I got home, I guess, from the Flyers game, and Cutter Gauthier scores a goal. And I was about to say, like, oh, could you imagine if he? And then I said, no, I got Jamie Drysdale. I think it's okay. But my mind did go there. I got to admit, having another forward like
it's funny. It's funny, Bob, because I wrote a thing about Danny Briere the other day.
Oh, and what if anybody hasn't seen it yet? I texted Anthony right after I read it. It is a phenomenal article that really takes you into what the thinking is of Danny Briere, and I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you. And like when I think back about all the moves that he's made to get this team, put this team together, obviously, having to trade Cutter Gauthier was not ideal, right? I mean, you see what the kid has become. He's going to be a regular 40-goal scorer in the league. He's an incredible talent, and that was a big loss at the time for the Flyers. But it's one of those things where, as a GM, he worked a deal with the Ducks and with Pat Verbeek. You remember Pat Verbeek?
He's the GM of the Ducks. Right?
Yeah. Rangers, Devils, so that he's the GM of the Ducks. And so a lot of times in sports, and fans maybe don't know, this is a little inside baseballish, but if you work out a trade with somebody and that you're giving somebody a player for pennies on the dollar, there's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge agreement between the two that, hey, if I have a chance to at some point return the favor, I will. Right? Like that's kind of like how, just in sports in general, this is what happens between general managers. Okay. And so a year later, the Flyers and Ducks make another deal for Trevor Zegras. And what does Briere give up for Zegras? Well, Ryan Poehling, who's a 4th line dime a dozen type player,
who also had a goal the other night.
Yeah. And I know, and gave Anaheim their 2nd round pick back that they got in the Gauthier deal.
Right.
So it ends up being, if you put the two together, Zegras and Drysdale for Gauthier and Poehling. It probably still is advantage Anaheim, but it's not as lopsided now as it may have looked initially.
Right.
And when you look at it, you sit there and go, Drysdale, Zegras, they're going to be a huge part of what this Flyers team is going forward. Neither one is a number one. Drysdale's not a number 1 defenseman. Zegras is not a number 1 center or first line winger, but they're both very good. Both a second pair and a second line guy, and they're going to be a big, big part of what you're doing going forward. It's a decent trade-off. It ends up not being as bad. So credit Danny Briere there and getting those players in here and identifying that, even though they were not in great situations in Anaheim, that they were probably both change of scenery candidates and both have worked out in Philadelphia.
And add to that it's a move that he had to make. Like, you had to get rid of Cutter Gauthier.
Right.
You couldn't keep him here anymore. So when you're forced to do something and it comes out, like you said, almost even, I could see some people rolling their eyes. Oh, well, they didn't win the trade. Well, you had to make the trade. So for it to come out almost even is a win. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right. So
and then you look at anything else that he's done trade-wise. I have a hard time finding another deal where I go, yeah, he didn't come out on the plus side. Like every other trade that he's made, it's been a plus. Like whether it was dumping salary or whether it was adding a player that it ends up helping the team or whatever, adding assets, draft picks, and now you have all these young players as you go into the offseason. The Flyers have a top 10. If you look at all the rankings for system for players in the system, they're top 10 in the league. Some places have them as high as like 5. Some places have them like around 8. But whatever you look at, they're top 10 as far as prospects go. And so, like, when you say that and you go, okay, you have all these players, other teams probably have interest in some of these guys. You could probably put packages together for trades that can improve this team. And I think that's what Briere being in this spot is a pretty good spot to be for a first-time general manager. Even it's his 3rd year, but has never had this job before. I think he's impressed.
It was funny when I go to bed at night, not to give people too much insight. Oh, 2 things of insight on Bob Cooney that nobody gives a crap about. One of my friends texted me, he goes, "What the hell is on your coffee cup?" Because he's watching. Because I must have taken a sip and all he saw was a girl on there. Yeah. This is, let me get this right. This is my daughter and I at our swim club like 10 years ago. So that's what's on my coffee cup. Don't think I'm a weirdo having, some girl. That's my coffee cup that my daughter gave me before. And then the other insight to me, I forget what we were talking about. I just lost my train of thought.
Flyers?
Yeah, I know it was Flyers, but I don't know. I lost.
Right.
What I wanted to ask you was, I do remember what I wanted to ask you. So I'm watching Rasmus Ristolainen play the other night and throughout this series. And you know how, this is the other insight I was going to give you. When I go to bed every night, I put something on that'll just, help me relax for a minute before I go to sleep. And I usually go to sleep. Once I turn everything off, I'm asleep within like 30 seconds. Yeah. Last night, what I watched was the Flyers coming back against the Bruins 3-0. So it was like a 10-minute highlight reel. And then them coming back in the 7th game, 3-0, and winning that game. And my God, not that I forgot, because I remember totally. Simon Gagner was great, but Danny Briere was just phenomenal in that series.
So it's so funny you bring that up, because I have a great Danny Briere, Anthony Sanfilippo story from that. I still tell people to this day was my favorite series of games, whether you want to say playoff series or whatever, but it was one of my favorite things to cover as a reporter. So they're down 3-0. They lose game 3, and I walk into the Flyers locker room, and I'm talking to Briere, and you could tell he's annoyed that they lost. And everybody wanders away. This was back in the day where you didn't have to do the scrums; you just go up to whoever you wanted to talk to. And so I'm talking to Briere, and he says to me, he looks at me, he goes, "We're going to win this series." And I looked at it. I was like, "Danny, you're down 3-0." He's like, "We should have won all 3 of those games." He says, "We were the better team on the ice. We know what we're doing wrong. We're going to win this series." I said, this doesn't happen. Like this doesn't happen. And he goes, "We get game 4. You'll just check in with me after each game." So they win game 4 in overtime, right? I'm like, okay, well, on home ice, whatever. We're going to go back to Boston, and it's going to end in 5. They played one of the best road games that you could ever play in game 5. And I remember catching his eye across the room, and after they won game 5, and he's just nodding at me. And I'm like, this guy, right? Because now you're thinking, all right, maybe if they go home and win game 6, they have a shot. They come back. They were awesome in game 6. Like, they were great in game 6 in Philly, and it's now 3-3. They have all the momentum. I'm like, unbelievable. This is going to happen. And then we get back up to Boston for game 7, and they're down 3-0 in the first period. I'm like, I cannot believe they did all of this to just fall apart here in game 7. And then they came back again, and Briere, he scores the tying goal, right? And it was a little bit of a fortunate goal, right? But nevertheless, like, he was always Johnny on the spot for stuff like that, in the playoffs. And I think he's one of only, I'm going to say 5 or 6 players, maybe something like that, who've scored 30 points in one singular playoff in the NHL history. Like, he was unbelievable that year.
It's funny. Flyers have a history of smaller forwards having big playoffs. Like Pelle Eklund.
Yes.
I think I brought him up to you the other day. We're going back into the 80s when he had a phenomenal series. I believe it was against the Canadians. And like, to watch guys like that are so small to be able to carry a team through a series like Danny Briere did against the Bruins. That was pretty cool to watch that last night. And I encourage everybody, again, you have to check out Anthony's story on Danny Briere, because it just gives you great background as to who he is, what he was, and how he's become who he is. And Anthony, I thought you did a great job, and it was good that he sent you a text to say, love the story. We always love when we hit the nail on the head on a story, and those we write about are appreciative. I got to tell you, winners win. Wapner Newman has been winning for families throughout the Philadelphia area and New Jersey since 1978. If you need a winner, call Wapner Newman at 215-569-0900 or visit wapnernewman.com. All right, I brought up Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah.
Now, I'm watching him this series, and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know if he's stepped up his game. I don't know if the Olympics took him to another level. Not that his game wasn't always fine, but he just seems like different now. He's that stalwart, big guy. Okay, you may have penetrated, the somewhere into the zone, but no, you're not getting past him. 2 questions. 1, what's his future here? 31 years old. I don't know his contract situation. I meant to look it up the other night. What is his future here? And 2, is he playing at a higher level than you've seen from him most of this year, or maybe since he's been here?
Well, I'm going to answer your questions in reverse. Yes, this is the best he's ever played since he's been on the Flyers. This is the player that everyone thought he was going to be when he was drafted so high in Buffalo. I think it was the 2013 draft that he was drafted as an 18-year-old, right? So, and it took him this long, 800 and some game. I forget, it was 820, third longest, third most amount of games played before playing in his first playoff game, right, in NHL history. So it had been a long, long time, and it's become kind of like a running joke, right? Like playoff Risto, oh, we keep hearing about this guy because everybody always said, just get him to the playoffs and you'll see the kind of player he can be and how impactful he can be. And it was like, all right, well, we're never going to see it. Like every year, like they're not going to playoff Risto, missed that opportunity again. And we got the first glimpse of it during the Olympics for Team Finland when he was their best. He was their best player. He was awesome for Team Finland. And so and then once they got back from the Olympic break, and they put him together with Travis Sanheim on that top pairing, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is a legit defensive pair that the Flyers have now, and they're eating 25 to 27 minutes a night. Like, this is big time stuff. And you get Risto into the postseason, and these 3 games, he's been so noticeable on the ice. And it's exactly what everybody always said about him. Like, just get this guy to the postseason, and you'll see he was built to play in games like this. And it's great. Now this gets to your first question, because now it's a different question. His contract status is he's got 1 more year left on his contract.
Okay.
Danny Briere was considering trading Ristolainen at the deadline. There was a lot of calls for him. And, if you remember, at the deadline, the Flyers at that point were pretty much out of it. We already talked about this. This was right before the 3.8% thing happened. And he doesn't trade him. And I know he got a good offer, at least one, if not more than one, for Rasmus Ristolainen, and decided not to trade him. And the rationale for that at the time was, I still think I can get more for this guy. I have the summer. Somebody will still offer me a first-round pick if need be prior to the draft for Ristolainen. I don't have to trade him now. Maybe I can get more for him if he continues to play great in the last 25 games. and maybe there's more value that I can milk out of it. So Briere showed really incredible patience with this. Well, now he's turned into what he's turned into. So now the conundrum is, do you still move Rasmus Ristolainen and get a first-round pick, and probably a first-round pick plus at this point with the way he's
really
played?
He would get that much back for you.
Well, so think about it. So last year, the Flyers, when they traded Scott Lawton, they got a first-round pick and Nikita Grabenkin, who's been hurt and not playing.
Right.
But Grabenkin probably would have been in this lineup on that fourth line in lieu of Hathaway had he been healthy. So he got a one in Grabenkin for Lawton. I think that Briere feels he could get a one and a player for Ristolainen. And so, do you do that, or do you look at it and go, this guy's a big part of what we got going on now. Like this guy matters to what we're doing, and just hold on to him and maybe sign him to an extension. Like, it's a tough question now. Whereas a month and a half ago, Bob, I would have told you Risto is going to get traded in June. Now I'm not so sure.
That's a great thing about a playoff run. Do you see the best of the guy? It's going to help you either way. I mean, he's probably bolstered up his trade value. He's also bolstered his value to your team. So that's another part of what playoff runs are so great for this team, because, again, didn't think they were going to be here. Looks like you're going to win a first-round series. You're going to get to a second round to play one of the best teams in the NHL. You'll find out what your players are, and others will see what they are, and it'll probably be in a good sense. So all of that stuff is really good. And any final thoughts on the Flyers? You got 7 o'clock tomorrow night, a chance
8
to
o'clock.
vote.
8 o'clock.
Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Oh, Ant, that's too late for me. I can't do that. 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Anthony and I will both be there.
You can thank ESPN for that, Bob.
Anthony and I will both be there checking that out for you. Of course, moving forward now off the Flyers and onto your other playoff team in town, and that is your Philadelphia 76ers. But before I do that, let me tell you, have you found yourself on the injured list? Get help now. Call Wapner Newman, PA and New Jersey's premier medical malpractice and injury attorneys at 215-569-0900 or visit WapnerNewman.com. Okay, game 3 tonight, Anthony. I will be going over to Sixers shoot-around in just a little bit. I was at Sixers practice yesterday. We got the news that was, we'll start with this. We got the news that was kind of, that Joel Embiid was on the floor with the team. Now, they didn't practice hard at all yesterday. It was more, Nick Nurse described it as a little bit more than a walkthrough. Right. But Embiid was on the court partially with the team yesterday, and they said he continues to do his own individual workouts as well as individual workouts on the court. So I'll just tell you where I'm at, Ant. All right, go ahead.
Before you do, let me ask a question just for clarification for the audience, right? So, when I go to Flyers practice, it's open. Like, we see the entire practice. Fans can come in and watch the entire practice. Sixers don't necessarily allow that. So, how much do you actually get to see, and how much are we to really, really trust what they're saying about his participation level?
All right. Well, I'll answer your second question first. I nothing against the Sixers PR people, because there's been a couple of teams of them that I've dealt with. All have been really good guys. I think they get orders from above.
Right.
We don't say anything when it comes to injuries. They look at injuries as if it's a black hole, as if it's somebody's fault. Injuries happen in sports, and I've had this conversation with their PR people a lot. It's not a big deal. I mean, you don't want anybody injured, and when injuries happen, it is. But that's part of sports, and to try to hide it or not talk about it or be so elusive about it, I never understood. So that being said, whatever they say to us, I take with a grain of salt. However, yesterday, as far as your first question, nothing. We don't see really anything. They let us in, and if anything, players are shooting foul shots or working on their own, taking some jumpers. Their practice is over. Yesterday, we were waiting. We were supposed to be able to talk to players at 12 o'clock and to Nick Nurse. It was closer or after 1 o'clock, and I'm standing in the lobby, and I see players driving away. So when they finally let us in, we talked to Nick Nurse, and then they brought out VJ Edgecombe and Justin Edwards. So we got to talk to those guys. So we didn't see anything. My feeling is, look, it was 2 weeks ago yesterday that Joel Embiid had emergency appendectomy. You had an appendectomy at 9 years old. Was that right? Or is that somebody else?
No, it was not me. I've never had an
Okay. Somebody
appendectomy.
told me the other day they had an appendectomy at 9 years old. I've never had an appendectomy. All I can go on is about 3 or 4 players in the NBA that have had it during the season. The normal comeback time is about a month, maybe 5 weeks. Okay. Joel Embiid, it was 2 weeks yesterday. I don't know if his appendix burst or not. He was in Houston. It was an emergency surgery. It lends me to think it did, but I don't know. I don't know that because that's a different level of surgery from what I was told. I would be really surprised. People are looking, man, probably not tonight, but Sunday. I'll bet you he'll be back Sunday. I'd be shocked. That's just me. I would be shocked. I would be surprised if he came back at this series at all. But we'll see. As with Joel Embiid all the time, and nothing against him. I'm not one of those, oh, he's a bleep because he can't stay healthy. I really don't think he did anything to his body that caused his appendix to burst.
Right.
It is unfortunate. I just don't expect him to be back for the series. So I'm going to do coach speak here. So I'm going to move on as if he's not going to be there. And if he does show up, great, add him to the team, and you go from there. But Anthony, you're surprised from Tuesday night's game with the Sixers. They get blown out in game 1. I had said before the series I didn't think they had any chance of winning the series. I didn't even know if they would win a game. Tim Kelly and I have talked about it on this podcast that, we would be surprised. We were going to be surprised if they won a game. They have, and they won it in convincing fashion on Tuesday night. I found myself watching the game just like with my eyes wide open. I can't believe they're doing this. What was your thoughts coming out of Tuesday night's win against the Celtics up in Boston?
I was as surprised as anybody because it was funny. You'll remember, Bob. So I was in Pittsburgh for game 1, and I was it was Sunday afternoon. The Flyers had a practice, and after practice, I was trying to grab a little bit of a late lunch, and I went over to this bar restaurant that was across the street from where I was staying, and I'm sitting at the bar. I'm by myself. And they had the game on, and they were getting blown out. I think it was early. The fourth quarter had just started. They were down 30 points or whatever. And I sent you and Tim Kelly a text, and I was like, "Look, I committed my 5 minutes to watching this playoff series because I thought this is what the whole thing was going to be. Like they're going to get crushed in every game. This is going to be just a waste of time." And then when I was like, "Oh my!" I watched a little bit of it, and I was like, "This is a different team." And you know what inspired me to turn it on, Bob? Like I wasn't even going to put it on, but then you put out a tweet early. I think it was in the first quarter. You put out a tweet that said something like this: the Celtics just don't look sharp. And I'm thinking to myself, are they taking this game for granted a little bit, Boston? Yeah. And like they had such an easy win in game 1, and that they think that they're just going to roll over everybody now. And I put it on for a little bit, and I'm like, the Sixers are playing like this. They're playing here. And then, as you wrote about, they're spending a lot of time in doing video breakdown right after each game and really identifying what went right, what went wrong, and what they're going to have to do the next game. And I'm like, this is Nick Nurse coaching. Like he won a championship with Toronto for a reason. And it's probably, this was probably part of it. And I sat there and said to myself, can they do this? Can they make a series out of it? Like, I've been so back and forth with this Sixers team. Like I've been in, I've been out, I've been in, I've been out, I've been in, I've been out. And I still think I'm out. But they're starting to make me wonder if they can, and if they can hang around long enough, like if they can keep this a series. Like, I'm with you. I don't think Embiid's going to play game 3 or game 4. Probably not in the series. But the one thing that I will say, when they upgraded him to doubtful from out, that was like that to me as a guy that's been around covering pro sports. That said something. Like that gave me a little, might he try and play? It might not be the right idea. As Ford says, in our chat, he says, I said on X that I feel like bringing him back the series may not be the right move. and to allow for it to play out as it is. He said he got destroyed by people on X for saying that. But no, but like, is it the right thing to do? Like, is this isn't Willis Reed in Game 6 and 7 for the New York Knicks in 1970, whatever was that, 73, right? This isn't that. This is a little bit different kind of scenario, because if you're bringing Joel Embiid back, you're bringing him back to be an impact player, not to be a guy to rally the troops and get them to play better, right? Like, I'm kind of with Ford on that. Like, unless he's ready to come back and play and contribute at the level that you need him to contribute, there's no reason to bring him back. But are they thinking about it? Maybe.
Yeah, and what kind of Joel Embiid are you getting? Look, I'm glad you didn't I'm glad you didn't use this. Oh, are you going to mess with the chemistry if you bring him back? I get so tired of that. We've all coached. We've all done that. You just give me the best players. I don't care if they're all 7-footers. If they're the best players on the floor, give them to me and I'll figure it out. And I think Nick Nurse can do that. You mentioned the film session stuff, Ant. I was curious about all this. They get blown out in Game 1. On Monday, we're up in Boston, and the Sixers didn't know what they were going to do that day. They didn't know where they were going to practice. They didn't know film session. They didn't know times. And they're texting us to let us know, because we have availability on Monday after practice to talk to players and the coach. So it's the Boston Marathon's being run that day. The city's crazy up there. Finally, we get word that they're going to Harvard University, and they're going to both practice and watch film up there. Well, we were sitting there for about 2 hours outside of the gym, and when I say they practice as if it was training camp. I mean, the sneakers were squeaking. There was communication, yelling, hollering. It was serious. And then it calmed down for a while, and they were watching film, and they watched for a long time. And my brain started to go to, wow, you got a 20-year-old in Edgecombe. You got a lot of young players. You just got blown out in Game 1. How receptive are they going to be to sit down and watch them get their asses kicked again? And they come out on Tuesday and do what they did. So to me, it did two things. One, great job by Nick Nurse and his staff to get them ready to play that Game 2 and come out and win. But two, it justifies it to your younger players that probably are a little too antsy to sit and watch tape, but it justified it to them. Like, oh, wow, put in some tape and look at the results. So they're still doing a lot of the tape work. Nurse told us yesterday. It'll be interesting to see. Boston's going to make some adjustments. They were just a totally different team. Shooting had a lot to do with it, but so did the Sixers defense. So it'll be interesting how this goes on. A great performance from the Sixers backcourt. That makes me a little bit. Here's two things, Ant. One, I don't think you can really win in the NBA with a backcourt carrying you unless one of those guys is named Steph Curry. I've said that to you before. But VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey particularly Maxey, didn't have a great shooting night the other night. And his shot has been a little bit off since the pinky thing happened in early March. They still won with him having like an 11 for 28 night from the floor, whatever it was. That would scare me a little bit if I was Boston. It's not like they both shot like, 10 for 15 or anything like that. They did what they did. They combined for 59 points, and the Sixers were able to win that. Boston's going to certainly start blitzing Tyrese Maxey a little bit more and paying a little more attention to VJ Edgecombe, I would imagine, starting tonight.
So the question then becomes, Bob, if that's the case, do the Sixers need another one of their secondary guys to be a difference maker in Game 3? In other words, are you looking at like a Kelly Oubre, for example, like and sit there and say, all right, they're going to make life more difficult on Maxey and Edgecombe. Somebody else has to be that different, whether it's Oubre or not, whatever. But someone else has to be the next, has to give us 20 and 20 and 7 or something like that. Like somebody else have to provide that in order for them to be able to beat Boston.
Oubre's a great name, Anthony. That's a great name. Paul George is another one.
Yeah.
It was funny. I talked to Nick Nurse yesterday. He constantly brings up like Paul George just makes the scoreboard move. And the way he said it, and he said it a couple of times when we were up in Boston. So yesterday I said to him, I said, What exactly do you mean by that? Like, does it mean that you're not calling plays for him? He just knows when he needs to get the ball and maybe go an ISO or the team needs a basket and he knows he can do it? Or are you calling plays for him during those times? And he's like, nah, it's kind of like both. Like the players do it, they know when they need something, and then they look down and they say he might have a mismatch and they get him the ball down low and clear out. So Paul George might be one of those guys. I agree with you, Kelly Oubre. He's got to hit 3, 4, 5 threes tonight in order for the Sixers, to be able to hang in that game. They do need that secondary because you're not getting it. No offense, but you're not getting it from a Dominic Barlow coming off the bench or Justin Edwards. As much as I like him, he might hit you 3 here and there, but you can't rely offensively on guys like that. And
you really have no inside game.
No, not really. No, Adembone is still a project, I think, waiting to happen. Yeah. I'll reserve my thoughts on a lot of that stuff, but you don't. I mean, Andre Drummond has an NBA skill set. He's one of the best rebounders in the NBA. He'll get you some slot points in the middle. Adembone, to me, besides blocking shots, which 9 times out of 10 takes him out of position anyway defensively, I don't know what exactly, besides being super athletic, his NBA skill set is. So that's still a problem there of what they're going to do. But it's going to be interesting what happens tonight. I'm looking forward to the X's and O's part of it to see how both these teams come out tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Bob. I'm actually looking forward to it because the options tonight are Sixers playoffs or the Phillies trying to end a 9-game losing streak.
Yeah, it's not good over there. It's like kind of gross over there. Well, they did something yesterday. Anthony, that you don't want to cloud ever as a reporter, and we don't let it. I mean, there are some guys that we like. There are some guys that maybe we don't get along with that we cover, whatever. Guys that we like to talk to, guys that don't like to talk to us. That's fine. That's all part of the job. Taijuan Walker's a great dude, and you've been around him an awful lot. When I was covering the team last year, the first game I covered on the road, I asked him if I could talk to him for a second. He pulled out a stool next to his locker and said, "Sit down. Yeah, let's talk." Yeah. Introduced myself. We had a really good conversation about where things were going with him. Great guy, very nice guy, very professional. Really, it took this long for the Phillies to realize, now I know money's involved or whatever, but it took this long to realize he's not a major league pitcher here anymore?
Yeah, it's a shame. And I'm with you, Bob, because Ty was one of my favorite guys in the locker room. Always, like you said, always willing to talk, well, especially pregame. Like I would love to talk to him pregame. Yeah. Just about whatever, and it's funny because, I always tell people Aaron Nola is one of the salt of the earth guys in sports, right? Like one of those types, and him and Ty were like best buds in that clubhouse. Right. So I'm with you, like just an awesome human, but yeah, that they should have gotten rid of him 2 years ago. Right. Yeah. After the season he had in 24, there was no reason to bring him back in 25 in my mind. And then he went and surprised us all last year and actually was functional, gave him whatever it was, 112 innings or whatever it was that he ended up pitching, 4.08 ERA, was actually saved them a little bit, took down some important innings for them. And you looked at it and said, okay, he's still not worth $18 million a year, but he was at least a functional major league pitcher who could do some things for you. But yeah, you came into this year and all of a sudden it's back to what it was in 24. Yeah. And I think good on the Phillies for identifying it as soon as they did and say, yeah, we can't do this again. We can't go through another 2024. Like they could have tried to massage it. They could have left him in the bullpen. Now that Zach Wheeler's back tomorrow, they could have left him in the bullpen as the long guy and just kind of like trotted him out here and there. But it was obvious that anytime he was pitching, he was going to get torched and the Phillies were going to lose. Yeah. You cannot have that, especially now that you're 8-17. You cannot have that because now the Phillies are still going to believe, Bob, that they are going to get back into this, that they're going to turn this around, that they're going to be a playoff team. They should believe that. They really have to. They should believe that. Absolutely. But what you've done is you've burned up a lot of your mulligans already, right? Yeah. In April. Normally you have X amount of games, you go, okay, well, we're going to lose games like this. We're going to have bad games. We're going to get blown out every once in a while. But you like to spread them out through the year. You don't like to have them all at once in April, right?
No.
Because you can't continue to have them. So they've burned up a lot of their mulligans. You couldn't put yourself in a situation where you had to rely on that guy to come back in and pitch for you again, because you knew more often than not that was a scheduled loss.
Right.
In a sense. So they did the right thing, and moved on from Walker. It will go down. People will remember it as one of like the worst signings of the Dombrowski era.
And he's had some.
Yeah, he's had some, right? But the interesting thing is like when I look at the Dombrowski signings over time, I kind of understood why they did, right? Like a lot of these, in the moment when it happened, I kind of understood it. I was never a fan of giving Walker 4 years, $72 million. I thought it was too much, but I kind of understood why they did it, because up to that point in his career, he had been a guy who threw a lot of innings, right? He had been a mediocre back of the rotation kind of guy. They had moved on from Zach Eflin because they were worried about his injury history.
Yeah.
Eflin was probably a better pitcher than Taijuan Walker, but they looked at it and said, we're not sure that this guy's going to stay healthy. And Zach Eflin's not been able to stay healthy since then, right? I mean, so Walker's pitched better than Eflin, or pitched more than Eflin did in that time. So the Phillies were right in that regard. But yeah, the number is what kills you. $72 million over 4 years, and he gave you barely replacement level performances.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to get to another thing. I think I sent this to you in a text last night when we were getting ready for today.
Yeah.
Dave Dombrowski said something this week, and people got mad at it, understandably so, and there was a lot of irate fans out there after he said what he said, and it was that we don't have a cleanup hitter. And people were like, well, that's your fault. You should have signed somebody to be. And I went another way. And I love listening to everybody gripe and all that stuff. Mine is, yes, you do. You absolutely have a cleanup hitter. And that's Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber is exactly what a cleanup hitter is supposed to be. Not a singles guy, not an average guy. He does strike out, but he hits you 45 to 50 home runs, and he drives in 130 runs. And I hate to say this, Anthony, back in our day, that is the ultimate cleanup hitter. And even today, that's okay. I don't care that everybody else does something. Well, everybody else has a guy like that hitting 2 or 3, and we like to hit him 1 or whatever. That's a cleanup hitter. You've tried to exhaust everything else. Why not get the one guy in the lineup? Now, look, I'll say Harper is a number 3 hitter. You're not sure about Trey Turner leading off because even though he led the National League with a 305 average last year, there's been some up and down. And even if you want to go there, okay. There's not a more prominent player on that team that fits a batting order than Kyle Schwarber in my book being a 4-hole hitter. Am I off my rocker here, Ann, or like,
Well, I'll give you 2 things, and I don't think you're off your rocker, but I'll tell you why I disagree with you. The first part of it is what you've already said. You say, why everybody else is doing it? Well, the rationale is very simple with baseball, and I think that we get lost in this whole lineup thing. First of all, the lineup doesn't matter that much, in all honesty. The only thing that matters is your first 3 guys in your lineup. First 3 guys in your lineup should be your 3 best hitters. They get the bat more than anybody else. That's who you want in those spots. That should be who bats 1, 2, and 3. And ever since the advent of the designated hitter in the National League, you now have guys at the bottom of the lineup who get on base, right? When pitchers were hitting 9, it made more sense to have your best run producers hit 4 because the pitcher wasn't going to get on base, right? The leadoff hitter only leads off guaranteed once a game. All right. Other than that, you don't know when they're going to bat. So if a pitcher wasn't going to get on base, you needed somebody at the top of the order who was going to get on base, and your run producers be behind that person, right? So it made a lot more sense when pitchers were batting to bat a guy like Kyle Schwarber cleanup. I would not be opposed to Kyle Schwarber hitting cleanup if you had a traditional leadoff hitter type, which the Phillies don't have. So that's more of what Dombrowski should have said, is that we don't have a leadoff hitter, right?
Well, yeah.
I know it would be taken the wrong way. It would be taken as a shot at Trey Turner.
Yeah.
But Trey Turner was never a leadoff hitter in his career. Never the right guy to be a leadoff hitter. He swings at too many pitches. He doesn't his on base, he doesn't walk, right? So yeah, he might hit 304 and but he's not going to have a 380 on base percentage just because he doesn't walk, right? So like that's where it really comes down to it. So if you had somebody who was a 380 on base guy who you could bat leadoff, then you could go Turner, Harper, Schwarber, or Harper, Turner, Schwarber, however you want to do it.
Right.
And have Schwarber hit cleanup and it would work. But without that, you need to have Schwarber has to bat in your top three. He just does.
So when I was with the radio station, I kind of made this argument also at that time. I looked up, I don't know if it was Trey Turner, but I looked up a leadoff hitter compared to Kyle Schwarber, who played about the same amount of games. That leadoff hitter who led off all year, and again, they played about the same amount of games, had about, I think 58 sticks in my mind, 58 more plate appearances than the number 4 hole hitter. If we're talking that limited, like, I mean, does it really, does 4 really much matter between 1 and 3?
Well, I mean, if you're talking 58 plate appearances, that's probably 3 home runs from Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying, like, that's about what that is, right?
Yeah.
And look, there are people. We have people in the chat who are saying this, and I don't agree with them. Chris and I have been arguing this for forever. He says put Crawford in leadoff, Schwarber to clean up. He's not alone. Tony Catullo says the same thing. Don't care if he's a rookie. Crawford should be a leadoff right now. He can make things happen. It's not that. Crawford is not ready to be a leadoff hitter. All right. Everybody's just saying, oh, look at the great start he got off to. Where's he at right now? What's Justin Crawford do? How's he looked in the last couple weeks?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Like baseball's going to catch up to you. Just because you get off to a good start as a rookie, there's going to be a learning process. You do not put Justin Crawford in leadoff. Maybe eventually, but remember, these are the same people who would say the last couple of years, Bryson Stott should be the leadoff hitter. Why aren't they leading off Bryson Stott? Well, how's Bryson Stott turned out?
Yeah,
you still want him hitting leadoff guys?
But, desperate times do call for desperate measures. And while I agree. I think it's too early for Crawford. You have to let him get his feet in under him. I think I'm going to bring this name up every podcast. I've been pining for like 3 or 4 years that I wish they would have got Luis Ariz in this lineup somehow. Like just a guy like that, right? A guy that gets on base all the time. A leadoff guy that, would probably form your lineup a little bit better.
Well, and here's the thing, and where I will agree with you on this is it doesn't matter to me where these kind of or an Ariz type hitter would hit in your lineup. Doesn't matter. Like I don't think the lineup is as big a deal as fans make it out to be. It really isn't. Other than the 3 guys, your top 3 hitters should be your best players because they should bat the most. But what the Phillies do lack, and you saw it in this Cubs series, is a bunch of guys who make contact.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Just put the bat on the ball. Like you don't know what's going to happen. And the Phillies have been nickel and dime to death a number of times this year. And you sit there, it's frustrating to watch when you're on the losing side of it. But teams that put the ball in play and don't strike out a ton, they're going to be successful. Now, you're not going to win without power. Right? That's today's game. Unfortunately, it is, right?
Yeah.
So you need guys who are going to put the ball out of the ballpark. Otherwise, you're not going to win. Phillies have a couple of those. They have a Harper and they have a Schwarber. They have guys who are going to hit home runs. Even Adolis Garcia, I know he's not gotten off to a great start, but man, he comes in and gets a big pinch hit home run yesterday.
Right.
And the game keeps him in the game at the end of in the 9th inning. You have guys in your lineup who can do that, who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. What you don't have is guys who just go up there, make contact, and make things happen.
Right.
And that's what's lacking from the lineup. And so when you say Luis Ariz, he doesn't have to be the leadoff hitter or the number 2. It doesn't matter where they're at in the lineup, just so that when the next guy comes up, it's not going to be a guy who's going to strike out, that you can strike out because he's going to be swinging out of his shoes.
Yeah.
That's what they need, and they don't have.
Yeah, like it was late in the game yesterday. So, be honest, I had Sixers, I had to write the story, so I was kind of back and forth with the Phillies, on and off and all. I was driving to get my son. They give up the 3-run homer. It goes 4-1 lead Cubs. I come home and I turn it on, and it's 6-2. I start to write, so I turn the sound down. I look up, and it's 6-6. I'm like, whoa. 7-7. I get in the car. The Phillies are coming up. I had to get out of the car for a second. I get back in, and the inning's over already. The half inning, and I'm like, what? Just to your point, Ant, 7-7 game. I think it might have been the 8th inning. I'm not sure what inning it was, and they just went 1, 2, 3 in like
it was the 10th inning.
It was the 10th inning. Okay,
yeah, so, and that's the thing, Bob, because when you think about it, you have a runner on second, and you can't get him home.
No, no.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can't get him. Like they give you the runner on second base in extra innings, and how many times has that happened to the Phillies? Where they can't get the runner home who's in scoring position with nobody out. Like that's the frustration, because that's where it's like they're not built for that. Move them over, get it. All it takes is ground ball to the right side, fly ball, that runner's home.
That's it. A bunt.
That's it. Right?
Yeah.
You don't even need a hit, and you get that run in.
Yeah.
And they struggle with that. They struggle with that year in and year out. And that's where the construction of the team is flawed. So it's not about not having a cleanup hitter. It's not about who's batting where in the lineup. None of that is really relevant. Those are just things for people to talk about. The construction of the team and not having people who put the ball in play enough is the real problem for the Philadelphia Phillies.
So I know he's not an everyday player, and if you're going to try to break out of a slump, you'd love to bring back somebody that is that everyday guy that could give you the boost. But I think tomorrow, having Zach Wheeler start against the Braves, his first start of the year, his first start since last summer in August, having him back, I think should be a boost for this team, not just because he's going to be on the mound for you and he's, one of the best pitchers in baseball when he's right, but also, like, we know the presence that Zach Wheeler is in that clubhouse. We know that, there has to be a sigh of relief when you look over and you see him standing there and like, okay, good, this guy's back. How much can he lend maybe to this team, turning some things around, not just when he's pitching, but his presence also? Yeah,
well, I think at first it's going to be more the latter than the former. I think his presence is going to matter more.
Right.
Because I'll tell you, and we'll get to this. I am still a little bit concerned that he doesn't have the velocity he had pre-surgery,
right,
and how that is going to affect him. And so I'll get into that, but. I think that he is a big part of that clubhouse culture.
Yeah.
He's the guy with the smoke machine, right? Like when they win games, right? They haven't played the smoke machine in forever, right? They haven't pulled out the smoke machine in forever. Like he runs that. And, he might be more of a quiet leader type. He's not big and brash and whatever,
right,
but he commands a room. And it's funny when you walk in the Phillies locker room, how things are situated and where guys are in the locker room. And I think that that's kind of indicative of they want to make sure that they have somebody in each section of the locker room that is kind of like it's their area. They run that area. And Wheeler is one of those guys who has one of those areas in the clubhouse. And so I really do think that will matter. He will be a calming influence. The players will turn and look and see, oh, Wheels is on the mound. Okay, we got this, right? It's a confidence thing. We talk about it in hockey. It's like if you have a good starting goalie when Dan Vladar's in net, they feel more confident than maybe they do when Sam Erson's in net, even though Erson played better down the stretch. But I mean, it's just you look and see and like, okay, we got this, right? Same thing with Wheeler on the mound. I do worry though that his velocity has been in the 93 range.
Right.
Even every one of these rehabs, he's not throwing 97 like he always does. Do I think Wheeler is a smart enough, savvy enough pitcher that he can figure out how to survive with reduced velocity? I do. But I also worry that he now may be a little bit more human as a pitcher. Than he was before, because now if he makes a mistake, he can't cover up the mistake because he threw the ball harder than most people do. right?
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same problem that Aaron Nola runs into, because Nola's never been a guy who throws hard.
No.
But because of that, if he makes a mistake in location, he gets punished for the mistake more in the terms of home runs or a hard hit wall or whatever, right? You worry that Wheeler now becomes more like that, and his numbers become more above average and not Cy Young caliber.
Yeah,
and
now location is everything, right, Ant?
Right,
Yeah. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I'm as everybody, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. And as you said, Wheeler being as smart as maybe, just maybe, he hasn't ramped it up all the way in some of these starts. I don't know. You think he would? Maybe he's doing it in the bullpen where he's unleashing 95, 96, 97. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens there. Phillies start a series tonight in Atlanta. I want to tell you, winners win. Wapner Newman has been winning for families throughout Philadelphia area and New Jersey since 1978. If you need a winner, call Wapner Newman at 215-569-0900 or visit wapnernewman.com. All right, we got other stuff going on here. Anthony, Philadelphia Eagles. Also, I want to talk about your travels. There's also a national story that's going on here that's kind of different. So we'll hit in on a little bit of that. Mekhi Lemon last night gets taken by the Eagles. They move up. They trade with the Dallas Cowboys to get a receiver. Doesn't that sound familiar? Didn't they just do that a couple of years ago and it got them Devontae Smith? But they get Mekhi Lemon out of USC, 5'11", 195 pounds. Suspect speed is one of the things I read on him, like 4.5-ish, somewhere around there, but really good quickness. A slot receiver mostly. Your thoughts on the pick, if you want to go in general, a wide receiver. It appears somebody's future here might have been written last night. What's your thoughts on the pick, if any, Ant?
Yeah, and this is not about the player, because I think Mekhi Lemon could certainly be a very good wide receiver in the NFL. And so it has nothing to do with the player. I just wonder if that was the biggest need for the Eagles right now.
Right.
I don't know. There were some linemen that I was more intrigued by, that you look at, Lane Johnson, this could be his last year. Landon Dickerson, this could be his last year. Like, finding the guy to replace those guys, to me, is far more important than getting a slot receiver, right? Now, I think that there's some upside to this slot receiver. He catches everything thrown his way.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's going to make Jalen Hurts a little bit more comfortable, I think, right? And in that vein, I think there's value. But I wonder if there are other players who have similar skill sets. Like, there's nothing about him that is like, oh man, that is a standout elite skill set that will translate at the NFL level. It's not. It's a I think, and I don't want to diminish it, because I think he's going to be a solid number 2 guy, maybe out of the slot. He's not going to be on the outside so much, but I still think he's going to be a solid number 2 guy for the Eagles. I just wonder if that was the right path.
Yeah. And to me, when I'm reading about him last night, if they got him, now he did win the Biletnikoff Award for the nation's best receiver in college last year. So that's something there. He's got tremendous hands. They say if it's a fight for a football, he has one of the strongest grips they've ever seen, that he'll catch it. He'll take it away from people. My first thought, though, was when I saw he was a slot receiver and all, the guy Jalen Hurts, he doesn't those hash mark things. He doesn't throw between them all that often. And that seems to be where Mekhi Lemon makes his living. Are they force feeding, saying, well, he's got that guy now, so he has to learn to do that? Or is it a case that maybe they didn't have a slot receiver as good as a Mekhi Lemon, and this opens up the offense even more?
Well, I think you're right. It does. It will. Look, I think it will open up the offense. I think it will help the offense, especially with the way Sean Mannion wants to run this thing, right? They want to make this more systematic and less about the individuals.
Right.
It's that coaching tree, that Sean McVay coaching tree that he's come from. That it's more about the system and less about the individuals that are part of the system, right?
Right.
I'm with them on that. I get it, right? And that's why I don't hate the pick, because I think it could work within that system. I just worry that they are so hell bent on getting this system right on offense that they are not seeing the forest for the trees and identifying that they have greater needs than that. Look, they went out and signed a bunch of receivers,
Right.
a bunch of third receivers, right?
Oh, that's a crowded room right now, isn't it, Ant?
Yeah, with Hollywood Brown and this guy they brought from Green Bay. They traded
Wicks?
for from Dontavian Wicks. Like you got guys like that. Now this Lemon might be better than both of them, right? Ultimately, and that's fine and that's good. But are you now over concentrating and overcompensating to try and get the offense right when you've left other areas of need to later in the draft? Like,
right.
I just didn't see wide receiver as the top need for them this year. That was it.
I agree. Offensive lineman still needs to be hit. A linebacker maybe is something that you're looking for. Maybe safety position is still very, very thin on this team right now. An edge rusher, that's always something that you might be looking for. So still plenty going on with them. You got here's the Eagles picks remaining. They traded away in that trade last night to get Mekhi Lemon. They gave away their 2 4th-round picks that were 114 and 137. So remaining in the draft goes, I think it starts again tonight at 8 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock, whatever. But they have the 54th overall pick, which is in the 2nd round. They have 2 3rd-round picks, 68 and 98. And then they have 1 in the 5th, 1 in the 6th. So still have some picks to make. You know how he's going to be moving and shaking. I would be shocked if he doesn't hit the offensive line tree that's still out there. Maybe he moves up. Maybe he does something. We'll see. I think last night told you, and I wrote this last night for us, that it appears A.J. Brown is definitely going to be gone.
Yeah.
And that lends to another story. Also, the lead reporter on this throughout the A.J. Brown saga, I'll call it, has been Dianna Russini, as we know. He's been talked about going to the Patriots, who head coach is Mike Vrabel, as we know. There seems to be some kind of, I'll do this, Ant, some kind of a connection there. With the intertwining of the hands. How do your thoughts on all this? I mean, it's
well, I'll tell you what, I never believed them to begin with when they came out and pushed back against the photo. Like the photos were damning enough as it was, and for them to sit there and say it was laughable and that this was nothing, it was no big deal. And then the story comes out that there are more photos that New York Post got, page 6, of the two of them kissing in a bar in 2000. So this has been going on for 6 years, at least 6 years between the two. And then you circle back, and she had a tweet. She put a tweet out about her kid, whose name is Michael. And in the tweet is, I'm looking at my 4-year-old son, Michael, and I'm wondering who are the greatest football NFL players and coaches with the name Michael.
Oh my God, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I mean, so she had to delete. She deleted her Twitter. She deleted it overnight because she was getting destroyed on Twitter because of this whole thing. My bigger issue, look, it's a soap opera, right? And I feel horrible for her family, for Vrabel's family. He's missing day 3 of the draft to go to counseling, right? Like stuff like this happens. You might remember earlier this year, we had the CEO who was at the concert who got caught with his coworker on camera hugging the coworker, right? Like, and they're both married. Like, look, those infidelities happen, and they're not good, but it really doesn't matter for us, in the grand scheme of things. My whole problem with this story comes from the journalistic side of things, Bob.
Absolutely. That's
where I get annoyed, because on 2 fronts. One, you can't do this. You can't. These are subjects that we cover. These are people. Yeah, they're human. yeah, it's okay to have a good working relationship with these individuals, but you can't let it get to a point where it causes a conflict of interest. And that's where it got, and it was for a long time, right? Obviously, this is something that's not just something brand new. This is something that she has been doing for a long time, and that's a problem. That's problematic. That skews any kind of report that she may have given you, where it came from, who it was intended to benefit, right? Like, that's bad. And that's bad for people who do what you and I do.
Right.
And then secondarily, where I have a problem with it is this is bad for women in sports, because there are so many women who do great things in sports, right? In our business, in journalism, so many who are just so good at their job and really work their tails off. But there's a mindset. There are people out there who don't think that they belong, and it's a more difficult uphill battle for these women in sports, in journalism. And then this happens, and so it automatically sets them all back. It automatically sets them all back 3, 4, 5 steps, and they got to work even that much harder to do a job that they were already really good at, but they have to prove themselves all over again because of one bad actor in this case, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I have a real problem with the whole thing. And Dianna Russini, in my mind, should never work in sports journalism again.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a female reporter come to me when this all came out and say, "Oh my God, it set women back," in her line of business. And this is a young girl who's trying to rise up through the ranks. And I looked at her and I said, "I hear you, but I hope to God we get to the point." And I'm an ideal, like I'm one of the most positive people I've ever known in my life, and to a fault. But I said to her, I said, "Look, this sets back Dianna Russini. Let's hope it doesn't set you back or others in your position, women in your position. No, it shouldn't. If you're a good reporter, I don't care if you're a male or a female. You're a good reporter. You're a good reporter. And let's hope that this will set back Dianna Russini. Let's hope nobody even equates it to setting back women. Although you're right, Ann, it is.
Yeah.
And look, I did say this to her. I said, but I can't say that because I've never been a woman. So I don't know what the struggle is. And I've obviously, we've seen it, but we've also been lucky enough to be around some of the greatest reporters in our lifetime that we've worked with that are women. And I hope that line isn't so man, woman. At some point in our lifetime, it's just, that's a reporter that messed up. She's a reporter that messed up. You know Absolutely. What I mean? Yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah, it's frustrating, and I know everybody's jumping on it. It's a national story. I understand why everybody wants to talk about it. Like, I get it, right? And it's juicy. It's tabloid, right? It's very. I get it, and I understand it. There's going to be jokes made. It's all well and good, but I'm allowed to be a little bit selfish here in the sense that it doesn't look good for journalism.
Oh, I can't stand it.
Yeah, I mean, it's for us, it's bad. It's bad because the media isn't trusted to begin with anymore, and now you have something like this, and it's like, well, there's more evidence why you shouldn't trust the media, right? Yeah. And so it makes all of our jobs harder.
Yeah,
and that's why it bothers me.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and give people some insight. When a new ownership group came into Philadelphia, and I was already covering the 76ers. And obviously, as you said, you travel on the road, you're with these people an awful lot. I made good friendships with some people on the Sixers. Now it's behind the scenes people, it's equipment manager, it's other people like that. If we went and got lunch or something like that, or if I saw them and it was a hug, hey, how are you doing at the beginning of the year? It was frowned upon, and something was said to those people. And one person in particular was called into a meeting, and this is people that aren't here anymore, called into a meeting asking about relationship with me, and do I ever ask them, for information, or we don't. And I make it clear, they know it, everybody knows it. I don't use friendships as sources. I would never do that. I don't do that. I mean, there was a guy that used to play for the Sixers, Spencer Halls. He was a beer snob. He liked good beer. He and I would talk about it. Maybe we got a beer, once in a while, but we set the rules. We don't talk about the Sixers if we're getting a beer. We'll watch a game. We'll do whatever. I don't do that. There are lines that aren't crossed, and you have to have your subject know that and believe that. You have to set them for yourself, because that's how you become, hopefully a good journalist. That's as clear as day. And for some people that don't remember or realize that, it does. It like hurts. It hits you in the heart, right, Ant?
Yeah, no, it really does. It really does. And we work so hard to cultivate people, sources, and people, and make relationships so that we can be seen as trustworthy, right? When we go to talk to people, we it's what we've done our whole careers, right? Like you have to trust me, I have to trust you, and we're gonna create this professional relationship. And then this standard gets lowered so far when something like this happens, and now we all become just this much more less trustworthy.
Right, exactly.
We all do by default. We all do.
Yeah,
and I wish I could be as optimistic as you, and sit there and say, it's just it could be just one person, but the world we live in today, we're all lumped in together.
Oh, no question about it. And
right?
Believe me,
we're all lumped in together.
It's a fault that I have. All right. We ended our last podcast. I asked you a series of questions because I said I want the people to know who Anthony Sanfilippo is.
Yeah.
So a little more insight into you. Talk to me about your travels. You covered the Flyers up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You already told us about sitting in a bar and throwing down about 30 or 40 beers watching the Sixers game.
At lunch.
Yeah.
At lunch.
Talk to me about your travels.
I'll tell you something, Bob, that I did really for the first. It's not like I've been on trains before, but this was the first time that I've really done a train ride for work purposes, for travel. And the reason I took the train to Pittsburgh and didn't fly, it used to be when you went to Pittsburgh, this is a few years back now, but there used to be a shuttle, a plane that would be up and down. You were there in like under an hour.
Yeah.
And it was cheap. It was at the time, I think it was, $100 round trip, whatever, $120 round trip. It was either Southwest or US Air at the time, right? Where the big airlines that did the trip from Philly to Pittsburgh.
A little puddle jumper you would get on.
Yeah. Those flights no longer exist. Now every flight to Pittsburgh is some exorbitant sum of money. We're talking $700 to fly from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. It's asinine. I don't know what the airlines are doing, but it's ridiculous. So I said, well, I ain't doing that. So my options then became either drive or take the train. Now the train's a little bit longer. It's a 6.5 hour train ride. Driving is probably, with a stop to grab lunch, go to the bathroom, get gas, it's probably in the neighborhood of 5. So it's like an extra 90 minutes on the train.
Right.
But man, is that 90 minutes worth it? Like, it was such an enjoyable trip on Amtrak. I got to be honest. First of all, round trip business class, $200.
Yep.
Right. So basically the same amount of money you'd spend on gas and tolls to go out there. Right. You don't have to worry about staying focused on driving the entire time, getting tired.
Yeah.
You can sit there in a very comfortable seat with plenty of leg room. You could do work. You can watch a movie. You can take a nap. You can watch a TV show. You can get up, walk to the cafe car, go get something to eat and drink. You're not crammed in like you're on a plane, right? Like if for some reason, and this happened on the way out, we had a small delay going out to Pittsburgh because there was a problem with a freight train in front of us. So we had to stop for about a half hour, and then, it was going like 15 miles an hour for another half hour. But like, even when that's happening, if you're stuck on a plane, you're stuck in your spot. Like, you get up and you can walk to the bathroom and that's it. And then you got to come right back to your seat. Whereas the train, you get to move around. You can go talk to people.
Yeah.
You can, whatever. It was so enjoyable. It was so enjoyable, Bob. Like I didn't think I was like, it was like, man, I could do this all the time.
So when do you start your job with Amtrak?
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, man, I got to take the train more often. This is pretty cool.
I've done it a couple times up to Boston when I was covering the Sixers. Same thing, like flights were crazy, and it was like an off day, a Saturday. So I said, you know what difference does it make? It is. You sit there, you can write a couple of stories, grab a sandwich from the car, the cafe car, or whatever. See the scenery, fall asleep. It really is. It's so much nicer than flying. But like I flew back and forth to Boston, which was like a 50-minute flight, which is kind of cool too. But I agree with you. The flights
are certainly faster. The flights are certainly faster.
Yeah.
But if you have the time and you're willing to take the time, take the train.
Right.
That's my recommendation now. Take the train.
And hey, maybe some of these shows coming up, besides Wapner Newman, maybe we'll have some Amtrak sponsorship.
There you go.
We'll see what goes on. But glowing endorsement.
We'll tell the sales team, get on that.
That's right. Glowing endorsement from Anthony Sanfilippo. Love it. All right, listen, we've run a little overtime here, which is great because Anthony and I just love talking sports and having you guys along with us. A reminder, you got Sixers tonight down at Xfinity Mobile Arena. I'll be there covering that for us. Tomorrow night, Anthony and I will be at the Flyers once again. They might be able to close out that series. You got Phillies going on. The Eagles draft continues this weekend. Keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on us because we are all over everything. Anthony, myself, Tim Kelly, we will get you the stuff as quick as we can with as much information as we can and some really fun inside stories. So, Anthony, thanks a lot for joining us or joining me today. What else you got? Anything to close things out?
No. I just usually tell everybody have a great weekend. A lot going on in the world of Philadelphia sports. All four teams are in the conversation right now. No better time of year, I think, Bob, when like April and October, I think, are the two best times of year because that's when all four teams are incredibly active in some capacity. And so this is a great time of year for sports, and enjoy the weekend, everyone. Let's enjoy the weekend.
And I love it. I got the windows open. I can hear the birds chirping out there, and so it's a good time of the year. So everybody, don't forget, read us on Pattison. We got everything covered for you, and we will be talking to you early next week. Thanks for joining us.